The trusty frosty freezer, it can help preserve your food. Seafood's yummy, summer peas to eat them when you're in the mood. No need to let food go to waste, just store them in that icy place. Keep all that goodness tightly sealed, defrost them for a tasty meal.
Hello everybody, hello children, welcome to this online field trip. I'm Sam, and today I'm joined by not one, not two, but three fabulous experts. Absolutely fantastic. We've got Martin, Stewart and James, and each of them have got their own expert knowledge when it comes to the chilly world of frosty frozen food. Now today we've come to a really unusual location for this online field trip. We're actually at the London Canal Museum. It's an amazing place. It's like stepping back in time, and we're going to be telling you shortly what this place has to do with frosty frozen food. But I can tell you that actually we're in London today, in the southeast of the country, and of course London is the capital of the UK. Give me a wave and a cheer in your classrooms, children, if you're looking forward to learning all about frosty frozen food. Me too, and I know these guys are looking forward to teaching you all about it as well. So let's meet each class we have taking part. First of all, let's go to Sandfield Close. They're in Leicester, and it's Mrs. Ian's class taking part. Hello, children. Hello. Looking fabulous in your red uniforms. Let's go over to the Downey School now in Buckinghamshire. Looking very smart too, and nice and lively as well. Let's go to Brunswick House in Kent. And they are getting louder. Let's go to Dean Park in Edinburgh to say hello to Miss Fulton. Fabulous stuff. So we have got a great online field trip for you. So we're going to say goodbye to Stuart and James at the moment. We're going to talk to you really, really soon. So go and hang out on the other side of the well. I'm going to keep you here, Martin, because of course, Martin, you are our host here. This place is amazing. Can you tell us a bit more about where we are?
Well, we're down the bottom of a Victorian ice well, and this is a huge brick circle built under the ground here in London to store ice. The ice came from Norway. It was farmed from the mountain lakes of Norway, where the water is pretty clear and it's very cold, so the ice freezes naturally in winter. And it was brought across the North Sea in sailing ships into the London docks and then by canal boat to this building here and stored under the ground for people to use for food preservation and other things in the 19th century. This is over 150 years old, this ice well.
Wow, it's amazing. What a journey the ice would make as well.
Indeed it did.
All the way from Norway to here in the southeast of England.
Yes.
I'm not a scientist, but whenever I get ice out of a fridge, it melts. So how did the ice not melt on its journey?
Well, you can think of this by thinking about taking two small pieces of ice out of your freezer at home. Take one big piece of ice and one little piece of ice. You leave them out on the table, and as you probably can guess, the small piece melts much quicker than the big piece.
Yeah.
Now you magnify that effect thousands and thousands of times, and you get a long period of time in which you can keep your big piece of ice. And you think of thousands of tons of ice all packed together in this well, so then they'd be kept for a long, long time. And you could keep it right up from the spring until the summer when it was needed most.
Wow, that is fascinating stuff, Martin. So we have some big blocks of ice here, but I'm guessing this isn't big compared to the amount of ice that would be transported
Your
over.
blocks of ice, Sam, they're little ones. They're little ones. It's they're much, perhaps 10 times as big as this.
Wow, and this has been here for quite a while, and this
Yes,
isn't melting that quickly. So I can see how the ginormous blocks of ice would stay.
Yes,
put.
and these blocks will be here for days.
Fascinating stuff. So the ice would come to this well, and
Yes.
were there many other wells like this around?
There were quite a number of ice wells around London and in other big cities as well. There were probably something like 6 to 10 ice wells in London, especially along the Regent's Canal. There were several because the Regent's Canal in North London has good clay, so that's great conditions for digging a well down into the ground. Most of them, though, have been covered up or built over by modern buildings. So this well is the only one that's in preservation that you can come and visit.
Wow, and it's so amazing to be here today, Martin. And so once the ice was here, what would happen? Would people buy it? Who were the customers?
Well, yes, it was distributed by horse and cart, of course, because there were no motor vehicles then. And it was taken to fishmongers, butchers, dairy merchants, anyone who needed to keep food cold. But it was also used for medical purposes. You probably know if you bruise your arm and you put a cold pack of frozen peas on it or something, it helps to alleviate it. They used to use it even for amputations. If you were unfortunate enough to have your leg cut off by the surgeon with a saw, that was a very painful thing, and it helped to have your leg chilled with ice before they did it.
Fascinating stuff. That is so good. So would most people be able to afford ice? Would it be in every house?
No. Mostly the poor couldn't afford ice. It was a luxury for wealthy people and traders and merchants. So if you were a middle class house, plenty of money, or a reasonable amount of money, you could have an ice box and have that ice box topped up every day by the ice delivery man.
Wow, and you could just choose your size of the ice. They would chip it off the
yeah,
block, wouldn't
they'd
they?
chip it down with a spike, which they'd poke into the ice and hammer it down to make the ice split into a smaller block, if that's all you wanted.
Oh, it's fascinating stuff, because I know that we do, and I do, take my freezer for granted. I pop things in there all the time. It keeps all my food nice and fresh.
Well, we take lots of modern things for granted these days, but fridges and freezers is one of them. We all assume we've got a fridge in the kitchen, but we haven't in those days.
Amazing stuff. Thank you so much, Martin. We are learning so much already. Before we learn any more, though, I know that our children have been learning all about Frosty Frozen Food before today in preparation, using all the amazing resources that we do have on our website. So I'd love to find out what you've already learned. So let's go to Sandfield Close, and if someone could come up and tell me what you already know about Frosty Frozen Food.
Hello, my name is Drew, and I have learned from my parents that make fruit decay do not die in the freezer, they just stop growing.
Great stuff. So that was Dhruv, and Dhruv learnt that the microbes that cause food decay stops growing when you put it in the freezer. They don't die.
That's right. If you freeze it, everything stops.
Fascinating stuff. Really great work. Let's go over to the Downey School now and find out what you've already learned.
Hello, my name is Lucy and I found the freezers through history really interesting. Beforehand I knew nothing about ice boxes or ice caves.
Great stuff. So the Downey School have been fascinated by the process that the refrigerator has taken. So from the ice boxes that you said to modern day fridges.
Well, yes, we've got those ice boxes upstairs in the exhibition part of the museum, and they're like a wooden chest, and they have a compartment where you put the ice, and a compartment where you put your butter and milk and eggs, perhaps, and if you keep topping the ice up with new ice, then it keeps the food colder than it would be in a cupboard, but not as good as a modern fridge.
Yeah, we've got lovely shiny fridges now, haven't we?
Oh, yes, these aren't shiny at all, no.
Oh, fabulous. Okay, time to learn some more now. This is a short video, and this is all about how frozen food became popular.
Frosty Frozen Food. The history of frozen food. In very cold places on Earth, people have always been able to freeze food. In the Arctic, for example, during the long cold winter, temperatures rarely get above freezing and often drop as low as -50 degrees. These extremely cold temperatures make freezing food very quickly an easy and convenient way to preserve it. This means that some people, such as the Inuit from northern Canada, have been freezing food for hundreds of years, long before electric freezers were invented. For most people in the United Kingdom, however, frozen food only became familiar in the 1950s, when home freezers started becoming popular. Before then, shops didn't sell frozen food. This was because they didn't have the right technology, and food froze too slowly, causing large ice crystals to form inside. When the food thawed again, the crystals had damaged its structure, giving it a strange texture that wasn't very nice to eat, even after it had been cooked. But then, in the 1920s, an American inventor called Clarence Birdseye solved the problem of how to freeze food very quickly. His method meant that the large crystals did not form, and the food had the same taste and texture as fresh food once it was thawed and cooked. Companies began selling frozen foods such as fish, meat, peas and berries, which grew in popularity as more and more people began having their own freezers at home in the 1960s and 70s. Before there were home freezers, it was harder to preserve food at home. That's not to say it was impossible. People could preserve fruit and vegetables by making jams, pickles and chutneys. And some people would dry or smoke fish and meat. But people couldn't enjoy the taste of fresh fish or fresh garden peas unless the food really was freshly caught or harvested, which would be impossible unless food was in season. Being able to freeze food has changed that. It means that we can eat fruit and veg that isn't in season but tastes like it is. And we can eat fish that has been caught and frozen thousands of miles away, but has the same taste and texture as if it were caught locally that morning. This makes it possible to catch fish in a more sustainable way, meaning our ability to freeze food plays a big role in helping us to look after our oceans. Frozen food has become a familiar feature of the modern kitchen. Freezing allows us to preserve our leftovers, keep food for longer so that we don't need to go to the shops every day, and it also allows us to enjoy all sorts of food at all times of year. In fact, you could say that frozen food is really, really cool.
Welcome back. Give us a wave and a cheer if you enjoyed the video. Great stuff. Now, as you can see, I've been joined by Stewart. He's back down the well. So, Stewart, can you tell us a bit about what you do and what you're going to teach us today?
I'm an agricultural manager working for a frozen food company. I've been working in the frozen vegetable industry for 36 years, and I'm here to tell you a little bit about freezing.
Fabulous. That's such a long time. You're the perfect person to teach us about modern day frozen food. So, of course, we all know that there's frozen food, but why do we freeze food?
Really to keep that freshness of flavour, keep the nutrients in, and basically keep it fresh so that as soon as you reheat it, it's as fresh as the day that it was picked. The other thing is that you can have frozen food all year round. You don't have to go home, buy a fresh piece of vegetables, put it in a cupboard. You can have it at any time of the year that you like.
It's so easy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, is it just a case of freezing food, or is there a technique to getting it right?
No, there's a technique to getting it right. Food, because its basic content is water, needs to be frozen very, very quickly. As you saw in the video there, if you freeze slowly, the ice crystals that appear in the water content of the vegetable tend to grow very, very slowly, and then they tend to break that structure. And then you lose, on reheating, you lose the quality, the eating quality, and all the flavours and vitamins as well.
When you say quick, so how quickly would you freeze food?
Most of the vegetables that we're freezing are frozen in around 8 minutes in the freezer.
Wow, I thought my refrigerator worked quite quick, or my freezer, but that's quite quick,
Yeah,
isn't
very
it?
quick, yeah. And we're fortunate as well that our factory is right in the middle of the growing area for our food, so that it doesn't take long once it's harvested to get it into the factory and obviously frozen, so that it's ready for resale.
Right, so it's all about time. Time is of an essence, isn't it? Now, when I get my frozen food out of my freezer and I heat it up and I eat it, I can't taste any different. It just tastes like I've just gone out to the shop and bought it like fresh food.
Yeah, that's
It's fabulous. But is it as good for you?
absolutely. The freezing process retains all the vitamins and the nutrients that are within the plant from when it's grown.
Fabulous stuff. Well, thank you so much, Stewart. I do know that our classes and our children have been getting very scientific this week as well, and investigating into how putting things in the refrigerator or into the fridge preserves food. So I'd love to know how you got on. So let's go to Brunswick House first. And if someone could tell me a little bit about the experiments you've been doing this week, that would be great.
Josh. About the bed. Keely, about the bed.
Hi, my name's Keely, and with our food we decided to put one on the radiator, one on our windowsill, and one in the freezer. And we were going to look at the results when we get back on Monday.
Great, so that was Keely, and in their class they got some food, they put some on the radiator, which obviously would be very hot, some by the window, and then some in the freezer as well, just to see the difference between, you know, which one would spoil first.
Yeah. Well, the bit that you put by the on the radiator, that would spoil and go stale and very, very, very quickly. But if you put your bread into the freezer, when you take it out and eat it again and defrost it, it will taste as fresh as it was when you put it in there. So
yeah,
the freezing process just keeps it and holds it in a fresh state.
Great, really, really good work, children. Let's go to Dean Park. So I know Dean Park have been doing something similar. Doing in your classrooms.
Hi, I'm Zach. We are freezing one piece of bread and leaving one piece in a box in the classroom to see what will happen to them. We think that this piece will go all mouldy and stinky.
Good to hear you.
Fabulous stuff. So they've been doing the same. They've been putting fruit in the freezer and then leaving fruit outside as well. So they think that the fruit that wasn't put in the freezer after a while is going to get a bit mouldy and stinky.
Yeah, it does. It gets very, very... plus the other thing is that you can take fruits out of the garden and put them into your freezer, and then you can use them whenever you want. You know, if you left them on the side, they'd just go rotten. You'd never be able to eat them. So freezing process does keep it keeps all the freshness in.
Yeah, great stuff. That is one thing actually I never really think about freezing is fruit. Can you pretty much freeze all sorts of fruits, Stewart?
Yeah, you can freeze most fruits. Yeah, you can. Yeah.
Great, lovely. Because I don't like to see my fruit bowl kind of overflowing with stuff that is about to spoil. And so if I just pop them in, cut them up, put them in the freezer.
Yeah, there's some fruits you have to do something with before you put them in the freezer, but you can freeze virtually all fruits.
Fabulous stuff. Great. Thank you so much, Stewart. And thank you so much, children. It's really great. You've been getting fantastically scientific in your classrooms. We're very, very impressed. You impressed, Stewart?
I am impressed.
Very impressed. And if you would like to take part in this experiment, if you haven't done it, everything you need to know to take part in the experiment is on our website, so take a look as well, along with all the great resources as well. Time for another short video now. This is all about what Stewart does for his job. This is frozen peas from farm to fork.
Frosty Frozen Food. Frozen peas from farm to fork. Peas are grown on farms in large fields. The process begins in March, when the pea seeds are planted using a machine called a seed drill. The farmer continues to plant the seeds until mid-May, so that the harvest is spread over a few months, because all of the peas we need couldn't possibly be harvested in just one day. The peas grow in the field for 3 months, and when it is time to harvest them, the farmer uses a machine called a pea viner. This machine spins the pea pods round and round against a paddle, which gently opens the pods so that the peas fall out and land on a conveyor belt. The rest of the plant gets blown back out onto the field to fertilize the soil for the next lot of seeds. Next, the peas get taken to the factory, where they are tested using a machine called a tenderometer. The lower the reading, the sweeter and more tender the pea. The peas are cleaned again to make sure no debris from the field is left over. Before they're frozen, the peas are blanched. Blanching means that the peas are dipped briefly in some very hot water. Doing this means that the pea will keep its lovely green colour and keeps the flavour in, so it will taste as good when it gets to you as it did when it was picked. It also helps to kill any bacteria that might spoil the peas. Now for the most important part, the freezing. The peas are cooled down from the blanching and then taken by conveyor belt to a machine called the flow freezer. Air that is minus 38 degrees centigrade is blown onto the peas, cooling the temperature of the peas to a very frosty minus 18 degrees in just 8 minutes. In fact, the whole process from harvest to freezing can take only 150 minutes. Once the peas are frozen, they are tested one more time, but this time with a special machine that uses infrared to make sure there are no tiny insects or stones that might have made it through the cleaning process. They are then packed into large crates and stored at minus 28 degrees centigrade, which keeps them nice and fresh. When it's time to deliver the peas to the shops, they are taken out of storage and packed into bags. Finally, they're transported to the shops in large refrigerated lorries. They keep them cold, so you can keep them in your freezer at home, ready to have for your tea whenever you like.
Well, welcome back, children. We hope you enjoyed that. Give me a wave and a cheer in your classrooms if you did. Great stuff. Now, as you can see, I've been joined by our third and final IC expert. This is James. Hi, James.
Hi.
Now, if some of you have watched the other online field trips, you might recognise him because he's done quite a few with us, haven't you, James?
We've done a few.
So what are you going to be teaching us today?
Today we're going to talk about how you can freeze food at home. So we've talked about it in the factory, now we're going to talk about it at home.
Fabulous. So what is the benefits of freezing food?
The reason we want to freeze food at home is we want to basically keep our food as fresh as possible for as long as possible, but also it helps save a bit of money and helps save the environment by not throwing so much food away.
Cool, that sounds really important. So is it just a case of putting things in the freezer?
Some things you can just put straight in the freezer. So for example, things like the fish fingers that we've got here or some of the frozen fruit that we've already bought, you can just put that straight in the freezer. But things that you might freeze yourself at home might be a little bit more complicated or need a few more steps before they go in the freezer.
So what are those steps then?
So for example, if we've got something that we've got too much of that we've taken from the garden, maybe like some soft fruits or something like that, we want to make sure that we put them in a nice sealed container or in a bag, because we don't want the air getting to them because we get something called freezer burn. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Okay.
And we want to make sure that we've labelled it so that once it's in the freezer we know what it is, and we want to make sure that we know when we've put it in. So we need to put a date on there that says how long that food's been in there, because your freezer is not a time machine.
That is so clever, because I always go into my freezer and thinking, right, I'll get something out, and then I will just see something, a big lump of something, and I'll be like, don't know what that is.
A mystery object.
It's a mystery object. I don't know when it went in there. I don't know what it is. I feel like I should use it, but I don't know how long it's been in there. So labelling is so important.
It's really important. Make sure you know what you're putting in there.
Now, you did mention something, freezer burn. So what is this?
If you imagine your freezer is like a box full of very cold air, and that cold air is about minus 18 degrees Celsius. Now, very cold things can burn just as much as very hot things can. So what you want to do is you want to protect your food from that very cold air. So make sure that you've wrapped it up properly, or it's in a plastic box with a nice sealed lid to stop that from happening.
Fabulous stuff. What about when we've got something out the freezer? Do we just take it out, pop it on the side, just leave it to defrost?
No. Well, basically, obviously, something like ice cream, great. Just eat that straight away. That's fine. But generally, you want to thaw things nice and slowly and safely. What you want to do is make sure that there's no ice crystals still in it before you start to cook it or before you eat it. Now, if you do that too quickly, what can happen is bits of it, your food will be quite warm, bits will still be very cold, and you're giving all that food back, that bacteria, a nice time to grow and multiply. So if you do it under chilled conditions in your fridge, that's the safest way to do it.
And how long would we need to do that for, James? Is it a couple of hours, or?
I would say usually as long as possible that is safe, so you want to probably overnight, so really what's that, about 8 hours or so in the fridge under nice chilled conditions.
Lovely. Now, if you're like me, very indecisive, so I say, right, tomorrow I'm going to have spaghetti bolognese, so I get my bolognese sauce that I prepared, like, you know, a couple of weeks ago, and I pop it out, but then I get to close to tea time, I'm like, I don't fancy spaghetti bolognese, I fancy something else. Can I pop that back in and refreeze it?
No, basically, don't ever do that, because what you'll be doing is you'll be giving all those food bacteria nice time to grow and multiply, and then when you do finally get round to eating what it is you've put back in the freezer, you could end up with a very nasty stomach bug. So basically, if you've frozen it and thawed it, you can never ever refreeze it again.
Wow, okay, that's a really good lesson, an important lesson to learn, isn't it?
Nobody wants that tummy bug.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I'm learning, obviously I learned from Stewart that you can freeze fruit. I didn't realise that I could just do that and take fruit out of my fruit bowl. Is there anything else that might be like, oh, I never thought I could freeze?
We can freeze at home pretty much anything, and as we said earlier, the quicker you freeze it, the closer to how its original state it will be in when you thaw it again. Okay, so we've got some examples of things here. So for example, all kinds of frozen fruit, vegetables. You might want to blanch them off, cook them off a little bit before you put them in the freezer, and then when you're having your tea, having your lunch or whatever, you can just almost cook them from frozen in the microwave. That will work quite well. Things like fish freeze really well. I mean, we've bought this fish today, so we don't have to thaw this, but if you put your own in the freezer, I would always defrost it first. Raw meat you can freeze, but you've got to be careful, especially about defrosting that. Never ever cook that from frozen. Okay. But some unusual things. So, for example, did you know you can freeze your milk?
No.
So your milk, for example, you can freeze that, but when you defrost it, it might separate slightly. Because what will happen is the fatty bits of the milk will come to the top and the water will sit at the bottom. But just give it a shake and it will come back to life.
Wow, because milk is one of those things that when you run out, you're like, oh no, you know, you want to have it on your cereal, you want a nice glass of milk, mum and dad might want a cup of tea. So it's
in your freezer. It takes a while to defrost overnight, still defrost it in the fridge, so maybe check before you go to bed, make sure you got some for breakfast, but you can take it out.
I'm loving these tips.
Eggs.
Surely you can't.
You can freeze egg yolks and you can freeze egg whites. So if you separate your eggs, so if you're making a recipe that uses egg yolks, so if you're making custard, which uses lots of the yellows from the egg, you can then freeze the whites and use them another day for another recipe, or the other way around.
Wow, that's brilliant.
But don't ever freeze a whole egg in its shell, because it'll expand.
Right,
and before it's totally frozen, it'll probably just explode in your freezer and you won't be very popular.
No, it won't be at all. I guess that's so good, because if you are making a recipe, then you know, a lot of recipes just need the yellow. I feel so guilty throwing away the white, but I've never thought of anything to do with it. I mean, I could do a meringue now, but I haven't got time.
If you're making a meringue with the egg yolks, egg whites, if you froze them, it's actually better.
Wow, this is brilliant, James. These tips are amazing, and I think it's going to change the way, certainly the way I shop and cook, and I won't be wasting much in future now.
And the whole point is that we want to throw away as little as possible, and by freezing it, we're avoiding that.
Brilliant, thank you so much. We've learned so much. I'm sure you're going to have some burning questions before we go. So if you can invite our two other experts to come in, Stewart, come in, Martin. Great stuff, come and join me, and let's see if our children have any questions for you. Let's go over to Sandfield Close first. Do we have any questions for our expert?
Hello, my name is
I think we've got a slight problem with you, but I do know it. I think that was Tia, and Tia would like to know, James, why do we not freeze certain foods like cheese?
Well, you can freeze some cheeses, so some things you can and some things you can't. But basically, it's to do with the way that they behave when you defrost them. So it's like with the milk, the fat and the water in the product may separate a little bit. So if you've got something like cream cheese, what you can do is you can just whisk it all back up again, and it will come back to life.
Great, fantastic, really, really great question there. Let's go to Downey School now and see if you have a question for one of our experts.
Hi, I'm Sally, and my question is, what is the most common food sold in most supermarkets, and how many do you sell in one average working week?
Really great, Sally, great question. Sally would like to know, Stuart, what is the most common frozen food and how many would you sell per week?
The most common frozen food that we do is peas, and we process about 60,000 tonnes of peas a year. So we're selling just over 1,000 tonnes a week.
Wow, how many peas is that, Stuart?
If you look into the tray down here, there's
Yeah.
quite a few peas in there, but in 1 tonne of peas there are about 1 million peas.
1 million peas, that's a lot of peas. What a great question. Let's go to Brunswick House now and see if we have a question.
Hi, my name's Ethan, and my question is, how long does it take for food to get from farm to fork?
Great question, Ethan. Let me just check. I think this was a good one for Stuart again. Ethan would like to know how long it takes for frozen food to get from farm to fork.
Very, very, very good question. In the case of peas, we are freezing peas from harvest to frozen in less than 2.5 hours. And in most other vegetables, we're freezing in less than 6 hours. So from harvesting right up to the point that it goes into store is normally 2.5 hours for peas and about 6 hours for all other vegetables.
Wow, so it's super, super quick. That's a really great question. Once it's in the freezer, how long can you leave frozen peas in the freezer for?
We don't like to leave anything in the store for more than about a year. So,
Okay.
you know, we've got that sale all the way through the year.
Fabulous, lovely. Well, really great question. Let's get one final question from Dean Park.
Hi, my name is Rachel, and our question is, how long do you defrost food before you can eat it?
That is a brilliant question, Rachel. Let me ask James this. So, James, how long would you defrost food for before you eat it?
I would say always defrost it thoroughly, which basically means as long as you can do it safely. So generally overnight in the fridge, make sure it's covered so it doesn't come into contact with any other food, and then you'll be okay.
Great, fabulous. Really great questions, children. Thank you so much. I've got a question for you as well, Martin. It's come via our Twitter account, the @EatHappyProject account. So how long did this museum open? And that's from Peter and Devon.
Well, this museum opened in 1992, so that's 24 years ago. And it's been developing ever since then. And so this is one of those places where you can come and see a bit of unusual history.
Fabulous. Yeah, we've seen quite a few children here, classes having a science lesson here, haven't we, Martin? It's been fabulous.
We do lots of education for schools in London, yes.
Great. I've got one final question for you both. So what is your, all three of you, what's your favourite thing about your job, Martin?
Well, I think that there's lots of variety, and I think the thing I like best is the opportunity to preserve and protect this fabulous bit of industrial history for future generations, and also to introduce people to it. I think that's the most rewarding thing anyway.
It's great. Well, it's been amazing to be down here and to be able to film in as well. Stuart, what's your favourite thing?
Days like these when we can teach people about frozen foods and talk to people about frozen food and how good it is.
It's been great, hasn't it? Really good. What about you, James?
Well, I would say it's getting to do things like come and do things like this down a well, because how often do you get to go down a well?
Exactly, exactly. Well, thank you so much. You've been fantastic experts. And children, we really hope that you've enjoyed today's lesson all about Frosty Frozen Food. It's been great having you watching and learning with us. Don't forget, if you'd like to sign yourself up for a free farm to fork trail, you can do that. It really is a great day out. You're going to learn lots about where your food comes from. So sign yourself up. Everything you need to know is on the website. Lots and lots of fun to be had. It's time to say goodbye from myself and our three fantastic experts from the London Canal Museum here in London. Down a well. It's goodbye. Goodbye, Downey School. And goodbye, Dean Park. It's been really great having you with us today. Don't forget there are dozens of these online field trips ready for you to watch on our website, along with some fantastic resources as well to accompany what we're doing here. So get downloading and get learning and enjoy, and we'll see you soon. Bye.